Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing. I've been talking to a couple people about the transfer portal and some of these targets that Oklahoma's going after because what you're seeing happen with Oklahoma and some of these targets just doesn't really make sense, right? I think a lot of people expected Oklahoma to be able to go out there and kind of have a good start, right? Especially when you know you have so many positions open on the offensive side of the ball and you have so many needs that you really felt like, okay, Oklahoma's willing to go out there and pay. They're switching to this NFL model. Like maybe they can go out there and get a hotter start than anybody else. And, I think we're now to the point where you see a guy like Donovan McCulley. This was a guy that, we all felt really good about for Oklahoma, right? I even heard that it was done. That's what I had heard. And I was ready to tweet out the lock tweet. I recorded a video thinking this guy is committed to Oklahoma. And then, like, in the 12th hour, things felt like they went south really quickly, right? And this has kind of been the story for Oklahoma this transfer portal cycle because you see a guy like Reggie Virgil, who Oklahoma was trending extremely well for. 6'4", 190-pound wide receiver, 816 yards the past season, 9 touchdowns. You look at what you lost with Nick Anderson. Like, you could make the case. 2 very similar wide receivers. Did you really lose Nick Anderson if you get Reggie Virgil? Because same production, very similar body types. And, while Oklahoma's trending very well, it seems like this is almost going to be a done deal. Texas Tech ends up getting Reggie Virgil. Now, I don't think this is a Oklahoma's not willing to pay instance, but this is more so of there is a lot of targets out in the transfer portal at the wide receiver position. And if you're Oklahoma, you don't need to go out there and pay like top dollar initially and right away, especially for guys that might not be, that top tier dollar echelon right away. So here's what I mean by this, right? Obviously, there's a guy like Eric Singleton Jr. in the portal. And although we haven't talked much about this guy, and the reason why is because I just wouldn't feel like Oklahoma's chances are super great here. You already have a guy in like Deion Burks that I feel like Oklahoma is trending pretty well to bring back. I mean, Oklahoma's going to have the ability to put together an NIL package. And, Burks is 5'9", 190 pounds, and he's one of those speedy guys, super dynamic, super athletic. And although last year, he didn't play very much and only had 245 yards and 3 touchdowns, the year before that, you saw the athleticism and what his ability was able to do with 629 yards and 7 touchdowns at Purdue. And so you look at a guy like Eric Singleton, right? He's 5'11", 190 pounds, transferring out of Georgia Tech. Really great season, 754 yards, 3 touchdowns. This season, the previous season, 48 receptions, 714 yards, 6 touchdowns. And this year, 21 carries, 131 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground. So Singleton's one of those guys where he's worth top dollar. Like, he is the best wide receiver in the transfer portal. But also, Oklahoma's going to be competing with the likes of other top tier programs for this guy. So it's just like, it's not one of those guys where you look at it and say, yeah, Oklahoma's probably going to be the front runner in this recruitment. And so, a guy like that, Oklahoma's probably willing to put together, I would assume, anywhere between what you would think $1 million, maybe 1.2 million. If I had to take a guess, like, I would assume they're wanting to go higher up into that million or more range for a guy like Eric Singleton. But you look at a guy like, Chris Hudson. This is another guy that I'm watching in the transfer portal. He was at Washington State with Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer. You would imagine if John Mateer enters the transfer portal, a guy like Chris Hudson might want to come to Oklahoma. And Ben Arbuckle knows what this guy can do, and it might be somebody that he tells Emmett Jones, hey, like, you need to try to get this guy here to Norman. And Chris Hudson last season, 54 receptions, 683 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5'11" as well. So similar frame type to Eric Singleton, but I wouldn't say he's as dynamic of the athlete that Eric Singleton was. But you look at Chris Hudson and go, okay, well, if I'm willing to pay 1 to 1.2 for Eric Singleton, guys, I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know if that's the actual numbers or not. But if you're willing to pay that much for Singleton, I would imagine a guy like Chris Hudson for Oklahoma is probably like 6 to 800K, right? Or maybe even a little less. So you have to look at it too, and you have to kind of understand, if you're Oklahoma, you don't want to overpay for guys. So that means sometimes you're not going to win recruits. Sometimes that means you're not going to win these transfer portal guys in the portal. But also understanding, like, especially at the wide receiver position, finding guys that can be productive at the wide receiver position is kind of like a dime a dozen. because there are guys that sit on rosters that don't get an opportunity to play that are extremely talented that could probably start for other programs, but they're sitting behind a bunch of 5 stars or, top 50 dudes at that position. And, they're just having to wait their turn. And so they hit the portal. And although there's no production there, they could still be a really good option for a school like Oklahoma, who not only needs depth, but needs guys that can come out here and produce right away. So again, if you're looking at guys outside of Virgil and McCauley, which I think Virgil committed to Texas Tech last night, McCauley's still not committed. But if I'm looking at Oklahoma, I'm saying Oklahoma's probably moving away there. You are at this point, you're looking at Oklahoma to see, can they go get one of the top wide receiver prospects in Eric Singleton Jr. Do you look at a guy like Isaiah Satanga, who, again, this guy was thrown. This is a name that was talking to somebody. It was thrown out to me. Again, 5'11". I would assume Oklahoma would want to go a little bit taller in the wide receiver department, like 6'1" or more. But, if Oklahoma wants to go after a guy like this, the more the merrier. I just think, there's guys out there that we're not talking about that I think could be more so in Oklahoma's wheelhouse in terms that maybe they're willing to pay wide receivers. That way they don't have to try to go out there and overpay. Because, the thing is, if Mateer hits the portal, I would assume you're going to have to pay him probably anywhere between 1.5 to 2 million. I would assume that's probably going to be the number. That's probably going to be the sweet spot because Miami's going to get involved and other schools will try to get involved with Mateer. So you look at an Isaiah Satanga, a Kevin Coleman Jr. He's been crystal balled to end up at Missouri, but he's from Mississippi State. And this was a guy another one that was thrown out to me that when I wouldn't have known to look for this kid until he was said something, but he is a very interesting prospect. 74 receptions, 932 yards, 6 total TDs. Again, a 5'11" wide receiver, but extremely dynamic at the passing game for Mississippi State team last year that really wasn't that good. So, and then of course you look at a guy like Chris Hutton from Washington State. The other important thing for Oklahoma fans to understand here is, especially on the offensive side of the ball, you still have teams that are playing in bowl games, playing in the playoffs, and some of these guys are going to wait to hit the portal till after their bowl games are over, until after the playoffs. Remember, they have 5 days after their bowl game or after the playoffs to enter the portal, even if the portal is closed. So just keep that in mind, that there is kind of a little bit of a gap there for guys to enter the portal after that time. So the guys that are in the portal right now are not going to be the only guys there. Let's just make sure we put that out there. Now, obviously, it's frustrating for Oklahoma fans. You only have one commitment right now, and it's a punter from Kennesaw State. I totally understand it. But you also got to understand this is going to take time. Oklahoma's got to go out there. They got to evaluate players. And on the offensive side of the ball, you have a lot of holes to fill, like tight end, right? Oklahoma's putting themselves in good positions with Tanner Colliel, the tight end out of Ball State. You've got Deuce Robinson, who I think is a very interesting prospect. If Oklahoma wanted to continue to pursue that again, they recruited him on the trail, ended up going to USC, but he's kind of that dual sport athlete. Wants to play football, wants to play baseball, a good baseball player. And Oklahoma's been successful in some of those recruitments with Skip Johnson and Brent Venables. So just keep your eye out. What's going on, right? This is what's going on. Oklahoma's, lost 2 of their wide receiver targets they were going after. If you count McCauley as like a serious target, I think they wanted to land him, but like, was he a serious target here? There are other targets out there. There's still top portal prospects available. Oklahoma's not going to overpay for dudes, and I think it's important as a fan to understand that and not to overreact here. It's not time for concern. It's not time for concern yet. So jump in the comments below, join the discussion, give me your guys' thoughts. If you guys have not already and you're new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys tomorrow.